remember to who this book is dedicated, actually. And my niece, Ella Ray. Here they are, yeah. And there's so many people, I think, in the book, so read the dedications, because often people don't realize they're in the dedications. It's always good to read the dedications. And also, we have cupcakes from Eat This Mill Valley, and they are actually Venus enchanted cupcakes, so I encourage you to eat them and to see what happens, because you know I have magical powers, right? Have that reputation. So thank you all for coming here tonight. And I'm going to talk, obviously, about Venus signs. So I love astrology, but one of the challenges we face as astrologers is we get in our heads. You know, it can keep us in our heads. I can explain to you what your Venus is, and I can describe it intellectually. And sometimes it's like me describing a sunset to an alien that's never been on Earth. It's like, oh, there's a big ball of fire that comes down every evening. The alien's like, that's, you know, how do I relate to that? So I get closer when I describe, say, the qualities of a sunset and what it evokes in me. So I might say there's a symphony of pink and orange. I may say, wow, the symmetry of the land and the sky is really perfect today. And it brought up in me a bittersweetness because it's an ending. It ends this day. And my alien might get a little bit closer to kind of the feeling of Venus. So how I'm going to introduce Venus to you tonight is to kind of do it in a way that's a little more visceral and imaginative, and because she lives inside of you. Right? And so it's your job to access her inside yourself using your imagination. And so I'm going to ask you to imagine for a moment that you are walking across a field, golden field. It's maybe your favorite place, but it's really oppressively hot out. It's sticky and it's, you know, just really oppressive, and you're getting kind of worn out and tired, and you see ahead a clearing with a spring, and you walk up to it and you kind of look around, is anybody watching? And you peel off your clothes because nobody else is there, and you slip into the spring, and instant pleasure, head to toe, just ripples through you. And your mind involuntarily thinks, this is heaven, and it just starts repeating this mantra, this is heaven. And for a few moments, you totally surrender yourself to this experience. Bliss, pleasure, being in your body, the sensuality of this moment. This is Venus. This is what Venus is for us, Earthlings. Venus holds our universal experience of pleasure, sensuality, connection to our sensual body, and our desire for those same things. So all pleasure desires originate from Venus. And it's the Venus inside of us that enjoys the tickling of our toes on a warm summer's day from the grasses, or the caress of a lover running his or her fingers down our back or thigh, or the laughter of a best friend who makes us laugh so hard that we pee because they tell such great jokes. And this is Venus. We all love Venus. This is what makes life worth living. She's a cherry on top. So Venus also holds our personal pleasure connection principle. The image I provided to you, I pretty much assumed was going to be a universal one. It'd be hard pressed to find somebody who doesn't want a beautiful, cool spring on a hot day. But in reality, we all have very unique pleasure principles and preferences as to what we enjoy. So people have subtleties. You know, what's a sweet love aphrodisiac to one person can be annoying to another. Venus is all about the liking and the disliking, the often physical and visceral sensation of yes and no. I want more of this and want less of that. And we simply like somebody, we know it, that's Venus. Maybe it's their art, their jokes, their style, the way they express themselves, It's a Venus magnetism. We feel drawn towards people. It's our Venus. Maybe they smell funny. Maybe you've had an experience where dating, for example, you get close to somebody and you don't like the way they smell. What is that telling you? Do you think you want to spend the rest of your life with this person if you don't like the way they smell? It's intelligence, actually. So our preferences about what we enjoy, who we enjoy, has intelligence. So pleasure has intelligence. And that's something I want you to, if I can give you something to really think about, take with you, is that your pleasure has intelligence, and to encourage that form of intelligence in yourself. So you're probably wondering by now, what is my Venus sign? And head in that direction. I'm going to have to use a little alien jargon. I'm going to have to talk to your head for a few minutes. You may be familiar with your astrological sun sign, but your sun sign may not be your Venus sign. So it could be. What you have is a 5-sign range around your sun sign. So let's say your sun is in Aries, the first sign of the zodiac. Your Venus sign could be Aries, or it could be 2 back, Pisces, Aquarius on the zodiac wheel, or it could be forward, it could be Taurus and Gemini. So you have this 5-sign radius. So in other words, if you are out on a date with a person and they are in Aries, and you're like, wow, they have really good eye contact and they're really intense, and they're talking about things that are really hitting in a gut level, there must be maybe it's Venus and Scorpio in that Aries. It's not going to happen. Scorpio's on the other side of the wheel. So they may have some Scorpio in their chart, they may have some Pluto, something that makes them a little more tangible and nitty-gritty than your average Aries. So you cannot be in Aries with Venus and Scorpio, and you can find your Venus sign if you're wondering. It's in the back of this book. There's a lovely Venus table. It's just a mental challenge to figure out how I could give you all your Venus sign in a venue like this for this reading, so you're going to have to look it up. But it's very easy to take you just a couple seconds. All you need to know is your birthday. So, talked about what is the difference between the sun and Venus. Okay, in astrology we say that the sun is your basic character motivations. In a nutshell, I'm really simplifying. Venus is your relationship motivations. It speaks to your desires, your affinities, your dislikes, your likes, pleasures, displeasures. In a nutshell, Venus is what turns you on and who turns you on. So with this affinity to who we connect to and how we connect, she kind of gives us information on, is this person the right person for me, through our desires and our preferences. So the person who will keep the magic alive for us long-term in a soulmate relationship will have qualities of our Venus sign. It's very useful information to know. Some of the preferences may seem superficial, and some of the differences between us, Venus signs. So like maybe we like, John, for instance, likes funk music. Not for me. I like new wave, I grew up with the 80s, stuff like that. So, okay, we changed the dial, we changed the channel. It's not a deal breaker in our relationship, right? But there are certain things that could prove over time to be deal breakers. So, what if we like travel and adventure? What if we need variety from our partnership? Intellectual stimulation, maybe a Venus in Sag or a Venus in Gemini, or maybe even a Venus in Aries. So, and then we fall for somebody who has Venus in Cancer, Capricorn, or Virgo or Taurus, and they're all about rooting, staying put in one place. If I love travel and you're a homebody, okay, maybe there's something else in our charts that can make it work. Or maybe we are flexible enough to go over here for a little while. and then come back here. But if we're heading into our retirement years, for instance, with different expectations about what that's going to look like based on, our preferences. I always wanted to travel. It's like on my bucket list, and our partner is like, I want to sit on the couch. I want to watch marathon Breaking Bad. That's my bucket list, right? Okay, point of contention. So that can be a sticking point, right? And so things like that come up with Venus. So Venus charges our relationship style. So we put a Venus filter over our preferred experience, what we'd like to experience. Like there's a famous quote by erotic writer Anais Nin, who says, "We don't see people as they are, we see them as we are." We see people through our Venus sign. Maybe we have the tendency to carry a sort of fantasy about our partnerships that marriage is an ideal, that we have to be in each other's pockets all the time, and we have to have togetherness and agree on everything and be on the same page, which might be a Venus in Libra. And some of these can evolve, by the way, if you're thinking, I have Venus in Libra, and I don't really do that to my partner all the time. Well, right. I mean, we grow and we change and we learn to accommodate, and that's Venus too. But, let's say we have this kind of, I want to be in your pocket. I want to know everything. Let's togetherness, agreement. And we're dating a Venus in Aquarius who says, we're going to need separate living quarters if we're going to make this work. And then I'm talking even classically compatible signs. Traditional astrologers will say, these are two air signs. Different needs, though. Different desires. So can you see how this might be useful to know in relationship? Just, these kind of basic affinities. And you probably already have enough knowledge of astrology to even identify, with what I'm saying. Hey, I'm an Aquarius, and my Aquarius sun sign, and my honey and I, we have to live in separate quarters, and that's true too, because we take our whole self into the relationship. We take our sun sign into the relationship. But how is this different from sun sign astrology? Let's take an example of an Aries sun sign person with a Venus in Pisces. So classically, we'd see an Aries sun person as being a real lover of independence, maybe even a rule breaker, somebody who loves adventure and the thrill of the chase. And their character will obviously influence the relationship, but they have Venus in Pisces, which colors this message. It somewhat modifies it. It says, love for me actually is, the adventure is good, and I need that to be me, to feel whole, to feel alive. But love for me is kind of mystical and spiritual. It's kind of out there. And I kind of need an out there partner, somebody who is more imaginative, generous, creative. Sometimes they're talking about reincarnation, other times they're talking about, hearing angels talk on flowers when they went on their morning walk, or they're just enchanted. They're enchanted by everything. That's kind of a Venus and Pisces trait. And so Aries still needs space to be their self, right? But his or her soulmates are going to be guided by this Piscean quality of a need for a belief in things and that are unseen. Like some of, for Venus and Pisces, love is mystical, so this idea of some of their favorite times being spent together are those when no words are necessary at all, when you're just sitting in shared space, shared presence, and you're kind of having that consciousness experience. That's Venus and Pisces. So it's very different from your oh, but I'm an Aries, I need adventure, da da da. No, if you're an Aries with Venus and Pisces, you're going to need a spiritual mate or someone who can connect with you on that level. And you can reverse this too. Say, okay, Pisces sun sign, Venus and Aries. This is a person whose basic identity, sun sign, Pisces, would be more of the creative, imaginative, emotive, empathic qualities. And then the relationship style is going to be almost like strikingly different, right? Like, go get them, let's go have an adventure, let's fight this out, let's have a little confrontation, let's get into it. And who I'm describing is actually Elizabeth Taylor. So, sun sign astrology leaves some things out. And I'm not a big fan of doing the one planet thing, frankly, like boiling every person down to their sun sign or their Venus sign. I'm an astrologer, there are 10 planets in the sky with all these different interactions going on at any given moment, and in your birth chart you have all of these archetypes at play. So the Venus, even your Venus sign is going to be modified by other things in your birth chart. And we just contain multitudes, We have contradictory desires vying for power all the time inside of ourselves. So that's why, if you want a comprehensive self-understanding, you go to an astrologer, right, and get a reading. But that said, if many of you were probably first exposed to astrology via Linda Goodman, that often is the first point of reference for astrology, and she wrote a book called Love Signs. Well, that was sun sign astrology, and it was powerful. She sold so many books, and so in the hands of the right astrologer, we can milk a lot out of one single planet. So, I've talked a bit about the difference between Venus and Sun and explained what Venus is in a general level. I want to talk about how we experience Venus today and some of the conflicts inherent to owning our Venus and really kind of expressing our Venus power. Yeah, I'm getting kind of hot, so.
I think they turned off the AC or something.
It's just a hot topic.
As long as you don't make it. It's a hot topic. I'll take that. That answer is my favorite. Voting up to the top.
All the body heat.
So there's conflicts inherent to owning our Venus power. And so interestingly, in myth, Venus / Aphrodite was no shrinking violet. She did not wait around for other people to make her happy. She went after who and what she wanted, and she knew what she had to offer others. We kind of remember those old myths from elementary and junior high about the magic girdle, and she was the fairest of them all, right? I don't necessarily buy that. It's an external face. What we're talking about is an inherent energy pattern living inside of us all. She knew what she had to offer. She was a self-possessed archetype. She knew what she had to offer. She used those gifts gracefully, seductively, as bargaining chips to get what she wanted. Her goal, satisfying her pleasure. What more does she need? It's a perfectly legitimate goal. Pleasing herself. So many Aphrodite-type people, men and women, because again, these are all alive in us, some carry more of her message than others. These people may not be classically beautiful or have the magic girdle. You probably have known people in your lives who you kind of like, she's kind of on the high end of average, not to be superficial, but oh my gosh, she's never without a man, or he's never without a partner. What is it about that person? Self-possession. I know my gifts. I know my erotic skills. I know my magnetic attributes. I know how to match you and give a little bit here, be nice, make compromises. And there's also that magnetism that rolls off of Aphrodite types that comes from those kind of feelings, that self-knowledge. So we could do the same, as one client said to me after reading the book. She's like, I need to put my Venus out front. Because we often don't. And so I've really thought about this a lot. I mean, it was a major motivation as to why I wrote this book. And there's a lot of misconceptions about Venus. I think as culture, we tend to believe in the one ideal, beauty ideal, one romantic love. The ship will come in. We can just sit there and wait by the moat for our prince or our princess, which creates a lot of unhappy people looking for a love and connection outside of themselves, right? And waiting for experiences of beauty and validation to happen to them. So when we're doing this, essentially, we're not in our Venus power. We're living in kind of her reflection. So Venus desires can challenge our ego, for sure. We may not sometimes feel like we should have those desires or judge them. They can challenge our partner and our partner's ego. They can go against what's acceptable to our conditioning. And I'm not just talking about, people who have the desire for, like doing S&M, cover your ears, LRA. That's what they do. Though it's a possibility, because it's important to pay attention to what turns us on. This is what creates the energy of magic and connection, right? But we all receive training about what pleasures are acceptable for us to pursue, or even if it's acceptable to have a sensual body at all. A Venus in Capricorn client of mine came to me and she said it took her 40 years to dress sexy. She was wearing a little cute mini skirt, little cowgirl boots, tank top, clearly at home in her body. And I was like, really? Why? She said it was her religious upbringing. She was told not to do that, but she to hide herself, essentially. And imagine the impact this had in her marriage, the man she was no longer with. She didn't even have that awareness about how to get what she needed from that. So we may not have such a severe case of what I call Venus dispossession, which is to say at some point in time we may have been given a message that really stuck with us, that inhibits us from standing in our feminine power, being confident, feeling beautiful, feeling good in our sensual self. More subtly, it can often be just a list of shoulds or should nots, the ways we kind of shame ourselves from asking for what we desire. Can come from a voice internal or can come from an external voice. It can come from parents, husbands, that'll reinforce that. But, we can take a better approach. Mighty Aphrodite can liberate us back into our bodies, back into our pleasures, into our sensual, soft, beautiful, and fierce side, and more. When we own our unique desires, our beauty, our talents, gifts, and neurotic strengths particular to us, we no longer expect others to do things for us that make us happy because we know how to ask for them, right? We're not blaming them for not measuring up because we figured out how to do this Aphrodite dance. We negotiate for them. We sweeten the deal, add a little bit of honey here, a little bit of sugar there. Maybe you have a desire you like. Can I give that to you? We play nice. We're just nice. Just being nice can get you places. I know that may sound obvious, but stating the obvious here. And if the person you're with, or in a hypothetical situation, we're talking about, having your desires met and your feelings of mutuality too, and that things are feeling reciprocal and that you're getting what you need to be pleased in your partnership. If they can't make you happy, we can move on, because moving on when someone truly can't make you happy, when they smell bad, or when they're not mutual, when they lack empathy, Aphrodite gifts, qualities that we need to be 50-50 in partnership. Moving on is an act of self-respect and self-honoring. And I would have to say you don't have to move on. Everything I'm talking about is an act of self-respect and self-honoring. So you asking for what you want is self-honoring. And that's my Aphrodite lesson. We also need to own our Venus shadow. This seemed to be a particularly fascinating topic when I presented this to my group of astrologers in San Francisco earlier this year. Really interested in the shadow. Astrologers tend to be kind of, ooh, they like the dark, they like the deviant, they like the things that's what astrology is. It's like peering, beyond the veil into the mysteries, right? So I have a section at the back of the book called Good Witch, Bad Witch. And what it is, it describes a list of behaviors that foster love and connection and those that inhibit it. I mean, I've talked with women who have said, you know, after reading Love Alchemist's Notebook, because I have a brief section in that on Venus, is my Venus broken? Or somebody sent me an email after reading Venus Signs. I love your book, it is so great, but is your book wrong? Because this doesn't sound like me at all. And my conclusion has been that if you're not standing in your Venus light, you're definitely standing in your shadows. Venus is an archetype of energy we have to express. In astrology, planets they're energy. We have to express them. They're going to happen one way or another. So we're either doing the light or the shadow. There's no other choice. And in our shadow, we sabotage our desire for connection. It's all kind of going back to the same positive intention behind all things. If you ever kind of work with that, it's a pretty cool concept to kind of look at the positive intention behind negative behaviors, because there is one. There's always one. For Venus, it's always connection and love. So I'm going to pick on Venus and Scorpio. Let's say Venus and Scorpio invites you over for dinner, and existentialism and deep topics. And you think this is so great, they have such great eye contact, you know, they are just really feeling them, they're really into me, and I'm feeling this sexual connection because it's Scorpio, right? And then you're like, this is really great, I want to continue dating you, and then you go out with your friends the next weekend, and you're getting all these texts from your Venus and Scorpio. Where are you? What time are you going to be home? And you're like, okay, this is telling your friends, this is a little weird. It's feeling, you know, I just want to hang out. You know, it's not so serious. And next thing you know, you're calling Stalker 911. You know, it's like, what? And you start pulling back. Go figure. You start pulling back because you're feeling a little threatened. But all they wanted to do was to connect and pull you closer. So what's happening here? Venus and Scorpio, the shadow. Venus and Scorpio desires intensity and devotion, but they also need to address any fears they have about being abandoned and betrayed and mistrust. They say, we'll have some. They can't control the world. They want to. They want to control you sometimes. They can't do that. So we all have light and shadow, and we need to know what they are, you know, if we want to be happy in our partnerships. So I have this section called Romance versus Reality versus Your Own Fairy Tale. So this is kind of where the rubber meets the road for me in this book, at least, and why I'm so passionate about this topic is, you know, like I said, we're often sold this kind of bill of goods around how relationships should be. It's supposed to be a certain way for everybody, right? It's all gonna end up in long-term marriage. It's all gonna be the moving in together, the picket fence. It's all gonna be togetherness all the time. We have these ideas, and then our partner's supposed to psychically know that they need to cuddle with us 5 times a day at least, and that we really like to go to this concert for our birthday, and you need to surprise me with concert tickets. And that, you know, the ideal relationship, you know, for me, I need you to adore me and celebrate me every day. Okay. Real life questions I'm asked by clients. You know, are these legitimate desires to have? And, you know, my client says to me, I want to be adored every day, I want to have the sun rise and set with me, and I want him to see something special every time he looks at me. And she's like a little bit shy to say this, I also want him to be super stylish. I want to, like, know that he's wearing good shoes. I want him to take care of himself. Am I being superficial? Okay, well, if you have Venus and Leo, this is your particular fairy tale. Welcome to your fairy tale. Leo is the sign of royalty, of kings and queens. If she is to attract a king, and not a prince. She must, number one, become the queen. She must be this person she is talking about, right? She has to walk with dignity, express herself with style, cherish and adore herself every day, see the sun rise and set in her own eyes. Because what we're talking about, Venus, like attracts like. Okay, it's your own personal magnetism. If you're not living it and you're expecting somebody else to do it for you, it can't happen. It's just harder and it's rarer, I would say too. Even the personal style bit that she felt like ashamed about, I talked about, being ashamed to admit your own desires, too embarrassed to even say them. So, okay, that's not my Aphrodite behavior, but it's what we do, right? The personal style wasn't superficial to her because it reflects dignity and pride in oneself. Wouldn't a king, a royal, have that? Somebody a queen would want on her arm. Somebody who's proud, who's dignified. So that's one of her Venus values. So to ask me, are these desires legitimate? I'd say yes. These desires aren't too much to ask for. But you have got to make sure which movie you are running. Is it your Venus sign movie, or is it something you picked up from culture? So this is another edgy place, I think, for us to understand about our Venus signs, is that the reason why we often don't feel in touch with our Venus sign is because we pick something up from Disney or Turner Classic Movie or childhood. We develop these beliefs, that it was all going to be this way. In reality, our birth chart tells us what we're learning from love, and I have to say learning, even though the initial erotic pull, it's so fantastic and wonderful because it has to hook you in to do the deeper work of relationship, which is self-actualization and becoming more of who you are and learning about yourself. So why else would we do it otherwise, right? If it wasn't like juicy and delicious and fantastic at first, why would we go through all of the heartache? To learn about ourselves, to grow. So fairy tales are appropriate. And I've given you the formula for that, right? It's your own personal fairy tale. You gotta make sure you're not running a cultural one. Venus and Leo, as I said, mythic love story, pretty much needs to happen. Choose a partner that's gonna do that for you. Maybe a Leo sun sign person, Leo rising, somebody who has Leo planets. It's kind of how astrology works. But choose somebody who can do that for you. It's not cliche. For Venus and Cancer, your storybook romance is more about having babies and pets and having a cozy little cottage and nesting together, which is also a cultural fantasy too. Mm-hmm. But it's when it's yours, it feels really different. It feels true. Venus and Scorpio, your storybook can last forever. But it can turn into fatal attraction, right? If you don't own your own shadow and other things. Venus and Aquarius, your fairy tale may more resemble the movie Harold and Maude. Young man falls in love with an 80-something-year-old woman. Totally shatters status quo ideas about how a relationship should look. So I want to do a little reading. And I want to do a little random lottery here. I'm open to reading any Venus sign. So does somebody want to volunteer their Venus sign?
Aquarius.
Okay. Any other Aquarians? Venus and Aquarius too? Mm-hmm. Wow, okay, cool. The rebels of the bunch. So every Venus sign gets their own love goddess. Because it's fun. So here we go. I'm going to read your love goddess, Venus and Aquarius. One of Venus's many roles is to inspire as a muse. While the muse may be talked about, looked at, or even be the subject of controversy, her voice is heard through the filter of an artistic medium or another person's voice or gaze. The muse has no voice of her own. Gloria Steinem would not become anyone's muse when, in an outrageous act of indignation on behalf of muses everywhere, she used her voice to speak and write about sexism. For one of her most famous pieces, Gloria went undercover and worked as a Playboy bunny at the Playboy Club in New York City, recording in great detail all the ways these women were being sexually exploited. Initially, this article made her wildly unpopular. She was blacklisted by colleagues and unable to get a writing job for a long while. A Venus in Aquarius who is called to live by her own rules will be the unpopular outcast for a time. Every Venus sign wants to be liked and have the love and approval of family and peers. But the social and gender values of Venus in Aquarius swim against the prevailing current, placing her in the path of rejection and disapproval. What to do? If she's to be true to herself, Venus in Aquarius must endeavor not to be swayed by anyone's opinion of her. Honoring one's unique personal truth and path is difficult in our society. At birth, we're given a preset path to follow, and while that set of values varies by culture and family, none of us are immune. Maybe we are supposed to get married by age 28 to a member of the opposite sex, have kids, join every committee we can, helicopter parent our kids, have a great career, and look eternally young and skinny. We are awash in cultural programming long before we discover who we truly are. This can drive our life decisions, causing us to try and change who we are and deny our own personal truths. All of this pressure bears down on Venus in Aquarius' self-esteem and her relationship to her femininity and sexuality. She may conform to the rules for a while, but if you were born with Venus in Aquarius, there's something about the rules that doesn't fit your reality. Because this Venus embodies the archetypes of the rebel, alien, and exile, being true to herself also means risking rejection or being an outsider. Often this Venus sign will attempt to make others happy and appease them for as long as she can, until she wakes up and realizes just how much of her soul she is selling for the sake of a sense of belonging, of security, of acceptance. She knows approval is not love. To claim the happiness and fulfillment she desires, Venus in Aquarius must annihilate her need for social approval, belonging, or fitting in. She can shave the edges off a square peg to fit in for a time, but eventually she learns that doing so is disingenuous and potentially disfiguring. If this Venus is a rebel, it's for good reason. Venus civilizes. And while the Aquarian urge to liberate and reform can be confrontational or harsh, Venus smooths out rough edges, creating the urge for intelligent debate instead of arguments, and using stylish acts of provocation to get her point across. Mm-hmm. By charming us with her outrageousness, this Venus makes the revolution of radical change attractive. Outrage is sacred for Venus in Aquarius. Gloria Steinem provoked arguments and revolutionary dialogues about the nature of gender, sexuality, race. Those with this Venus sign were born to challenge the status quo in terms of personal values, relationships, self-worth, and body image. This may include redrawing the lines of the sexual and body politic, redefining the social and gender roles within a community, and the very definition of marriage, or breaking the relationship mold in a family lineage. Venus in Aquarius' ardor for equality and truth, as she sees it, is unmatched. She offers agape, a universal form of friendly love to everyone in the universe who needs it. This is why she needn't worry about being unpopular forever. This Venus is born ahead of the times, intuitively knowing what's next. And since Aquarius' very personal choices and values are linked with the collective tide, which she initially challenges, eventually she sets a trend for others to follow. Still, you won't find her in the popular hangouts. By the time her fashion fad or movement goes mainstream, she's nowhere to be found. Venus in Aquarius has moved on. So that's a outrageous Venus sign. A Venus sign of radicals, for sure. So one of the questions I get is how my Venus sign matches up with your Venus sign, and it's called compatibility in astrology. That's the term. Each Venus sign has its formula. Love equals XYZ. For say Venus in Virgo, love equals service. Me taking out the trash, cleaning out the garage means I love you. You noticing me doing this is a cherry on top because I'm Virgo, so I tend to feel invisible. I'm the servant. For Venus in Sagittarius, love equals adventure and philosophical exploration till all hours of the night with a dash of hedonism, maybe some athletic sex thrown in there. Okay, so how do these two Venus signs fare together? Definitely a need for common ground to be found. And okay, mutual understanding. We'd also have to learn to not project our version of love onto the other. So that's kind of the kicker here with different Venus signs, because Venus in Virgo, love is service, which means I want that service from Venus in Sagittarius. Sagittarius, the specialty is not taking out the trash. It is taking Venus and Virgo under the night sky and pointing up to the constellations and saying, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. Let me tell you a story. That's Venus Sagittarius. Okay. Truth be told, Sag is often guilty, Venus and Sag, of overlooking the mundane in relationship for the ideal. And Virgo happens to specialize in the mundane in relationship. So obviously both can learn from each other. Sag can help Virgo look up from the work, right, and stare at the stars, and Virgo can help Sag see the value in investing in the mundane side of the partnerships with all of its roles and obligations and responsibilities. We learn and we grow through those. Still, we need to learn how to bridge the gap, right, and essentially value the respective differences and partnering styles these two have while getting what each respective Venus sign needs. So it's not about abandoning your desires. Here's another thing about Venus. You know, my partner sees love as adventure, so I'm going to just go on the camping trip and leave my Venus outside the tent. Well, if that happens too many times without mutual reciprocity, then it's going to actually dim the magic in the relationship. Because Venus holds the magic, as I said earlier, like the magic to keeping, the magic, the spark, what keeps our love alive in the long term. So if our desires aren't equally indulged, we lose that erotic spark for each other. So, you know, the question that comes up, you know, it's a very big question. How do you keep the magic alive in long-term partnerships? You need to start with Venus. You know, make sure your Venus is nurtured and nourished. Make sure she gets what she needs. Make sure your partner's Venus gets what they need. So, what's the takeaway here? I'm going to wrap this up. Your Venus sign describes your likes, your desires, your own particular fairy tale, right? How you connect and what blocks your connection, what others find attractive and magnetic in you and you in them. And that special magic that you bring to the table of partnerships, like what you have to offer others. And also informs you these qualities in loved ones. So you can learn more about your soulmate's secret desire, if they haven't already told you in this book. If they're not telling you what their secret desire is, help them become more conscious. You know, try it out. See if that works for them. You can learn about your daughter's Venus sign. Help her grow into her own Aphrodite, mighty Aphrodite traits, strengths. That's one of my hopes actually for this book, is that we mentor our kids instead of having them soak up negative conditioning. They learn to trust themselves and be confident in their own skin. So, on that note, Linda in an email to me said, leave them wanting more. Little did she know, maybe she did know, that's Aphrodite's specialty. Reveal just enough. And then leave them wanting more. So I hope that's what I've done for you tonight, is intrigue you enough to look up your Venus sign and spend a little time with your Venus. So thank you for coming, and I'm happy to answer your questions.